All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are recording Sunday evening during the second quarter of Cowboys 49ers. Today we're going to talk about the Week 8 Sunday slate, Jaden Daniels and his heroic Commanders, and the rest of the games. We'll talk initial impressions about the openers for Week 9 and then wrap the show with Giants Steelers Monday Night Football. But Drew, what was your single biggest takeaway of Sunday?
Jay, 2024, as far as a sports year, if we set aside the Olympics, which in and of themselves are always spectacular drama, 2024 has been a bit of a bust as far as like entertainment value from the world of sports. I will tell you that Friday through today has been just a throttling awesomeness of sports. The World Series Game 1, Game 2 into this NFL Sunday was just phenomenal entertainment. And ultimately, we do this job because we are entertained and we love sports. And it is such a relief to be gratified with weekends like this, where there's so much amazing stuff happening. And the Jaden Daniels Hail Mary was special. The Jameis Winston led Browns win over the Ravens was phenomenal. The NFL action just across the board was really, really, really fun today. Your Jags game had a change in win probability of, swings of 20%. It felt like by the play at the end, with Malik Willis ultimately leading the Packers to that win. I feel like you had, let's go down the line. I think you had the Texans clinch a playoff spot today with their win and the rest of the AFC South losing. I think you had the Bills clinch a playoff spot today with their win and the rest of the AFC East losing, except for the Patriots, obviously, who I think slayed the Jets. You effectively, I believe, had the Commanders clinch at least a wild card spot, if not keep themselves in the running for the NFC East. Like, this was a really fun and exciting day of football. I have more hope for the Chargers and the Broncos providing some entertainment if they get their way into the playoffs, which it feels like they will as wildcard teams. And then, yes, Falcons clinched the playoff spot, I think, beating the Buccaneers today. So this was a hugely impactful Sunday, I think, in terms of playoff and championship equity. And yeah, the fact that there were also some really fun, exciting moments on top of it all was pretty amazing. Do you agree with me that effectively the Dolphins got eliminated, the Bengals might have gotten eliminated, the Jets got eliminated, and the clinching scenarios that I mentioned all came to fruition?
I wouldn't say they've been eliminated, just because right now, I mean, the Chargers and Broncos are occupying playoff spots at 5-3 and 4-3, and it's like the Bengals are, a game back of the Chargers, or a couple games back of the Chargers, I guess, 1.5. So I think that those teams like the Bengals and Dolphins still have scope to go on a run, and I would be taking the field over the Broncos and Chargers both definitely being in. But yeah, it certainly seems to be a lot of clarity. I think that the Colts, in a way, the most interesting team of the day, just because the Anthony Richardson experiment seems like it might just not be able to go on for that much longer, with how just subpar he's been throwing the ball and being able to complete passes and anything close to an NFL standard. And I bring them up because, yeah, they're in theory, they're a half game out of the playoffs right now. They're 4-4 somehow, but I just don't think that Richardson is viable. But what's your read there?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I also think that the Colts sent us a message by sending him out there these last 2 weeks that they're going to try to develop him this year. That's their organizational, modus operandi. And okay, I will hold. We have not seen a full season of Anthony Richardson playing football. And at what is he now? Probably 7 starts, 8 starts, 8 to maybe more. 10 starts. We'll say 10. 10 starts now. I would say that it is not trending as poorly as Bryce Young, but it's certainly trending poorly. And he had more learning to do, more growing to do. And so for those reasons, I don't really fault the Colts for electing to kind of tack in this direction as opposed to putting Joe Flacco out there and trying to, get a wild card spot. This is not a championship caliber team with Joe Flacco. It's a playoff caliber team with their schedule, but considering the injuries they've already sustained, I don't really have a strong disagreement with them electing to go in this route. But yeah, right this moment, Anthony Richardson is not he's not a quarterback who's going to win you a football game, particularly in division against a challenging opponent. I'm very confused about exactly what is going on with the Texans and how to rate them. And they, to me, still have just flashing red sirens of fraud alert all over everything that I see with them. Eye test, stats, everything. CJ Stroud continues to do pretty absurd things in terms of getting this team across the finish line, and that's not going to really get it done in the playoffs. And so I'm hopeful that there will either be growth with the Texans or an opportunity to fade them in the playoffs. But whatever the case is, the Colts, and Anthony Richardson right now are just they're miles behind, and it was a 3-point loss, so it wasn't huge. Jonathan Taylor had an incredible day today. The defense, I thought, for the Colts played a lot better than they have any right to play, considering their health, and just in general, the way they've rostered that defense was kind of questionable to start with. But yeah, I mean, at 4-4, the Colts are not out. They're not eliminated. This was not an elimination game, but I think their path to the playoffs now is pretty obviously via wild card, having 2 losses to the Texans.
Yeah, I thought the most interesting thing in that game was just that Stroud was just constantly under siege. I think he was pressured on over 55% of his dropbacks, and
every week
it seemed like it was kind of inferred pressure even when he wasn't being pressured because he wasn't throwing the ball as well as he often does, even though he had his typical awesome CJ Stroud plays. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with Houston either. I just don't think they're particularly great at the moment. They're especially without Nico Collins and now Stephon Diggs. Like, this is a team that's like 2 points better than your average team on neutral, whereas there was the hope that this could be like a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and they're probably a tier below Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore at the moment. How much do you upgrade Philadelphia after they eviscerated Cincinnati?
I have to upgrade them pretty substantially, honestly. Coming into the season, I had Philadelphia in the very top tier of power rated teams, and then had to do a lot of managing my rating with the loss of some very, very important pieces on that offense. And the fact that they're now at full strength and they're playing as well as they are, I think is pretty clear and obvious that you have to take them seriously. They have mismatches all over the place in the passing game. This is a very, very, very decent passing offense combined with a very, very good rushing offense. And as we've kind of talked about, the secret to succeeding in today's NFL is succeed enough on rushing that your opponent has to put more players in the box. And then that opens up things in the passing game for you to really create space for your wide receivers, assuming you have them to do some damage. And it does feel like, to a degree, almost like painfully at times, Hurts and Sirianni and Kellen Moore are able to do all of that.
Yeah, I don't think that Jalen Hurts is fixed, but he certainly looked better today than I think he has at any point in the season, where previously he was falling into the Hurtsian trap of my entire game is either tuck it and run or throw go balls to AJ Brown in single coverage. And I think he was a little bit better today, though still I think overall it's been a pretty disappointing season from Hurts, but certainly trending in the right direction after today, even though he probably wasn't going up against much.
there was a moment in the game where I'm sitting on the couch and I was literally doing the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the television, like, oh my God, Hurts rolled left.
Yeah.
Did you see it? I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? It looked so uncomfortable and unnatural. And like someone literally must have told him 500 times this week, roll left against this defense and you will find success. And he did it. And I was like, whoa, like this is amazing. But you know, like he's still a young quarterback. He's got elite weapons. He's got amazing protection. Like this is he should continue to get better throughout the rest of the season, and we should see growth and him mature into an elite quarterback. I think, if not elite, at least good.
Yeah, you can be good. You'd be slightly above average. All right, let's get to the week 9 openers. Was there one that leapt off the page to you?
So the ones that I'm really keyed on mostly revolve around how is the market interpreting some of the injuries that we saw. Obviously the Thursday night football opener was a surprise. With the Texans losing Diggs, and I don't think Diggs will likely to be back on a short week against the Jets. I was kind of shocked that the market moved in their direction, and I get it. The Jets just lost to the Patriots, and that's quite embarrassing. However, and the Jets lost Mosley, who matters surely for them at the linebacking core, and really the linebackers have been their weakness on defense this year. But I was a little surprised the market moved in the direction of the Texans on the open, considering the loss of Diggs, and I kind of leaned Jets there. And then, everything else was mostly injury related. I have basically completely written my anything positive about the Jags as a loss at this point, considering all 3 receivers who are wide receivers, at least, who are healthily targeted, got hurt in that Green Bay Packer game. The fact that the Eagles opened up at a flat 7, I thought was interesting. And I don't really see any world where that doesn't move off of the 7 to 7.5 once people digest how exactly the Jaguars are going to attack the Eagles, because it's going to be a lot of very inefficient running for the Jags, combined with a lot of Ingram targets, and that doesn't really stir much in the way of confidence that the passing game is going to get going there. So Eagles, I think, will move off 7. And then, the Cleveland Browns need to be meaningfully upgraded with Jameis Winston under center. I'm a little bit surprised that they're dogs to the Chargers, who are traveling now to Cleveland this week. The Browns defense, and then really just the vibes were very different in that game against the Ravens. It felt like there was a little bit of a release, sigh of relief to a degree that they were not competing with Watson across that team. And I am excited to see if if they can carry that success forward. But what to you stands out as you look across the boards?
The injury stuff is interesting, with the Lions being 4.5-point favorites of the Packers in a game that might decide that division. I thought it was interesting that the Vikings are 7-point favorites against the Colts as well, which is perhaps it is an indictment on where Anthony Richardson is at the moment for the Vikings, even without Christian Darrisaw to be that heavily favored. But the one that is kind of most interesting to me is the Seahawks are 1.5-point favorites over the Rams. Just on neutral at the moment, which of those teams do you think is better?
Rams. Like no hesitation, Rams. The injuries to the Seahawks defense continue to move around different parts of their roster, and they had zero ability to stop the run today. So the Rams leaning into a healthy Kyren Williams game would be my expectation, and the fact that Stafford now has weapons in the passing game, and you get another week of recovery and another 10 days of prep for Nakua and Kupp. The Rams should be small favorite in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it maybe gets a little bit underrated how incredibly dominant the Rams have been and how efficient they've been whenever they've had all 4 of Stafford, Williams, Kupp, and Nakua on the field at the same time, particularly now that the offensive line is getting healthier and more competent. It's just an elite offense. And the defense, which is not great, but they've added Jared Verse, which does not offset the loss of Aaron Donald, but at least eats into it a little bit. They've binned the Tre'Davious White experiment to their benefit, and they were able to kind of figure things out a little bit in the second half against Darnold and Jefferson and co. So, yeah, I think right now, and it's a lot of the Seattle result was determined by one of the worst snaps I've ever seen in my life, to completely derail one drive, and then Geno Smith tripping over on fourth down as well. But yeah, I think the Rams are the better team at the moment.
Yeah, we agree with that. And again, like, the Rams were one of my bigger wins of the week, so I think continuing to press Rams makes sense. Rams getting a playoff spot, I don't think is outrageous. And certainly, we have a lot of game left to play here in San Francisco. But if the Niners were to lose tonight, the Rams are very, very live for a playoff spot by winning to play home playoff games, which is amazing. So maybe Rams NFC is actually the angle. I got to ask you a quick question before we move on from openers. The Cincinnati Bengals were surprisingly favorites, I think, against the Eagles today. Like, it was one of those lines where you look at it and you're like, God, man, like, if this is standing, if this is not going to move to pick, that means that there is someone out there that really supports this team from a betting standpoint. You have to respect that sort of stuff. And then they effectively got completely run over in the second half of that game. And it wasn't really because of injury, and Burrow didn't play especially well. And it felt like the market in general was expecting the Bengals to really give you a "we're here" kind of a performance. It just didn't happen today. And now they play the Raiders this week, and they are laying 9 at home. Excuse me. This Raiders team is kind of a little bit plucky, a little bit annoying, a little dangerous. Like, they were able to find a cover against the Chiefs today, when the Chiefs, I thought, outplayed them considerably in that game. What is your current temperature on this Bengals team, and what did you make of their performance today in this opener at 9?
Yeah, well, I think the defense is just unambiguously bad, and there's no real way for them to fix that, particularly in the secondary at the moment. Like, they just had no chance against AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. It'll be a little bit easier against the Raiders wide receivers, but I think what they need to become, a 10-7 wild card type playoff team that is probably going to be the ceiling of their regular season at this point, is the offense needs to be all world. And if T. Higgins isn't out there, like, I don't think it's nearly as dominant of an offense if defenses are able to key in on Chase, where, like, sneakily Higgins has been the guy who has been Burrow's first read target guy, because Chase has been double teamed so often. And having just 2 elite wide receivers out there instead of 1 tends to matter a lot. And I think as well, the offensive line just isn't that good, and it's never really been that good the entirety of Burrow's tenure. So if the offensive line isn't going to be amazing and it's just Chase out there, then I just don't think the offense is so incredible. Like, for them to even have the performance they did today, like, Burrow was pulling out magician plays and keeping plays alive and running for his life and having all these Burrow plays out of structure. But I think that Higgins is really what elevates this offense to the next level. There was some random plays, like, it could have easily been very close towards the end. But ultimately, I just think that when you're going from Higgins to Yoshivas as your number 2 receiver, then there's ripple effects across the board. Okay. And the defense is just like the 24th, 26th best defense in the league. And if you're the 26th best defense and the 13th best offense instead of the 4th best offense or whatever, then you're just not particularly that good. So yeah, that's my read on the Bengals right now. They're like a slightly above average team, but not really a contender.
Yeah. The one kind of key play from the Eagles defense, where you had the defended pass that was tipped to the GJ interception, felt like it basically ended the game. And frankly, like, maybe that was a fluky play, but you're definitely correct in that if Chase is the only receiver that you are fearing, then yeah, you can commit 2 guys to him, and that happens.
Sneaky thing with Chase too is that I'm not sure how much of this is noise. It might be like a lot of stats say that TJ Watt is never double teamed, whereas when I watch games, he's constantly double teamed. I think it's just a weird thing with where he lines up and chipping, not counting as double teams or whatever. But the separation stats on Chase have declined like every year. And I'm not sure. He still looks pretty good to me, and he still looks perfectly athletic and fast. So I don't know if that's just a weird thing that's a product of double teams, which would be my best guess, but that is a little bit strange, and I think that's contributed. Like T. Higgins is getting targeted more than Chase every week that he's healthy, basically. So might be something strange going on there, but I suspect it's mostly just noise. All right, before we get to Giants Steelers, Sunday Night Football heads to the Great Northern this week when Justin Jefferson and the Vikings host Anthony Richardson and the Colts. NBC and Peacock will lead you up to kickoff with coverage starting at 7 p.m. Eastern.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, Monday Night Football. Before we get out of here, the Steelers are down from a touchdown favorite to 6-point favorites. The total is a lowly 36.5. Do you have any bet in this game, Drew?
Yeah, looking for the Giants, and I will be honest with you, if the Giants don't cover a +6 in this game, I probably maybe calling it a season supporting these clowns. But I can't get the 6, man. I don't think that the Steelers are good enough to be 6-point favorites against anyone in the entire NFL outside of the Carolina Panthers. My Steelers ratings right now have them 25th best offense, 2nd best defense. I have them as a net -1. Even though, again, like they're the 2nd best defense in the NFL by my numbers. I think that a week of tape on Russell Wilson and the fact that his deep ball is so lame ducky and underthrown is going to be a bit of a problem against a Giants defense that I think is fairly well coordinated. On top of that, last week I thought the Steelers were in a bit of trouble because they have some turnover in terms of personnel on the interior of their offensive line. Those guys are ailing, and I thought that the Jets could take advantage of that by generating some pressure on Russell Wilson, who is not an especially good scrambler at this stage in his career. And it didn't materialize, but you know what? The Giants have Dexter Lawrence, and he is much better than anything the Jets have going right now in terms of interior pass pressure. And so I think ultimately that could be a distinguishing factor here for the Giants defense to really keep the Steelers in check. Honestly, I will pay to see the deep ball to George Pickens continue to work. The catches that he made last week on Monday Night Football were on Sunday Night Football were extraordinarily fluky, and I just don't believe that that's a sustainable way to run an offense. On the flip side, I do think that you can take advantage of the Steelers if you can get anything close to a balanced attack going, particularly with the passing game, with Malik Neighbors now having another week to kind of have his feet under him, recovering from his concussion. And I think you can take advantage particularly of opportunities against CB2, CB3 here with the Steelers, as you know, they definitely are fine, but not especially great. So hoping that the Giants can go at a minimum score for score with the Steelers here, and that this is a somewhat competitive game. I think the total at 36.5 is like hilariously low, but at the same time, betting an over with these teams feels like suicide. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with taking +6 and hope that we just get a competitive contest with the Giants putting together a couple scoring drives. I think realistically, the Giants need to get to 16 points to cover this spread.
Do you think there's a chance, or there is a chance, do you think that it's a reality that the Giants' offensive line is just beyond, it's just too far gone now for them to be competitive?
It's really tough to say because obviously the absence of Andrew Thomas is massive. Like, he was their best player, and if you can generate pressure on Daniel Jones, then you have yourself a problem. I'm kind of banking on the fact that the Giants have the information now that they need to get Daniel Jones more involved in rollout game and more involved in the running game. I'm nervous that the Giants aren't trying to win. I think that they're best served as a franchise if they had a high draft pick next year. They could draft a quarterback. But that said, I definitely think that if they, if this is, if they view this game and next week against the Commanders as sort of their last gasp to get back into any kind of a playoff hunt, then they're going to give us the good plays here. And I think that involves Daniel Jones scrambling, and I think that will help mitigate some of the issues with the offensive line. I don't have a strong rating at all on Joshua Ezeudu or really anything that's going across the entire offensive line there. But the interior at least is playing serviceably, and Jermaine Illuminor is a guy that I don't mind going to war with at right tackle. So I think this is probably, just get a couple early field goals, get a little bit of momentum, touchdown drive after halftime, and then we cover 6.
I like it. Random one for you before we finish off. I saw the other day that TJ Watt has 16 pressures on the season in 7 games. 16. Last year he was above 80. Last year he averaged over 5 a game. This year he's barely over 2 a game. But I've watched a lot of TJ Watt. He still looks awesome to me. His PFF grade is off the charts. Do you think this is just a product of him just getting chipped at an insane rate? I believe at one point he was getting chipped almost twice as frequently as any other player in the league. Or is there something weird going on here, or is it just purely the chipping and double teaming?
It's definitely the way teams are planning around him, I think. I have not seen a drop in the quality of play from him specifically. No. I watch him play every week, and I'm like, man, he makes a couple splash plays. He's like seemingly like the gravity of the defense every snap. The defense itself is very good, and I think ultimately teams are figuring out ways to make sure that he is not a guy that like actually has the opportunity to create the chaos play that is a strip sack fumble, touchdown, things like that. But yeah, his counting stats so far this season have been pedestrian. And I think you watch a game like last Sunday night against the Jets and you're like, okay, I felt TJ Watt watching that game.
Yeah.
You look at the box score and you're like, he didn't do anything. Yeah. And then you look at his DPOY odds and he's shortening. So it's like, okay, well, if the Steelers continue to win, if they continue to have a top 3 defense, then it's just going to be him. But ultimately, yeah, there's pretty clearly something going on. And I will note that even though he only has 18 total pressures this year, if you do dial it in a bit and you look specifically at quick pressures, of those 18, 10 of them were quick. So when they are electing to use him a little bit more dynamically, a little bit more unexpectedly, in like the high leverage type of downs, he is getting there and he is making an impact. So I think it's a little bit of he's just got gravity right now.
Yeah, sneaky thing with TJ as it relates to defensive player of the year is that, and like these things are always around the margin, but if I were a TJ Watt backer, which Unfortunately, I'm not. Giving
That makes two of us.
I'm not. Not really in on TJ at all. But losing 2 games with Deshaun Watson kind of hurts a little bit because Deshaun Watson was walking into sacks
Yes,
like I've never
that's
seen
a
anyone before.
great point.
Now he gets Jameis, who I believe has a fairly low sack rate for his career.
Yeah.
And certainly won't take as many as Deshaun does. But yeah, the thing is, like TJ Watt could have just 4 sacks against Daniel Jones, and then all of a sudden he's minus
It's over,
140
yeah.
to win Defensive Player of the Year. But if he does have another quiet game and say he gets a half sack, then he would be at 5 total through 8 games, which is pretty low for a Defensive Player of the Year favorite. And then, he's still got 2 games against Baltimore. He's got to play Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels out of the bye. Like, these are games where, in theory, the Steelers' defense, which I think is very good, but I'm not sure it's all world, maybe it may be made to look mortal. So I hope that TJ continues to not get sacks, not get pressures, because it'll make that market a lot more interesting, as opposed to whether if he just goes on a rampage. Like, the award is in his hands. Like, if he just wants to do the TJ Watt thing and have 12 sacks in his last 10 games, then it's probably good night. But based on everything so far, I think he is a little vulnerable, certainly at price. But we'll see. We'll have a better idea after he faces the Giants' offensive line and Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I will say this real quick: the fact that the other teams in the AFC are starting to stand up a little in terms of competing for a wild card spot, particularly the AFC West. That definitely hurts his case, because the difficult back half of the Steelers' schedule is only really going to be good enough to get them to 10 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think their median outcome would be 10-7 and second in the division. But now they have a serious path to just winning the division. If they just kind of get
that's a good
lucky
point.
and split against Baltimore,
That's a good
and all of a
point.
sudden they can win the division. And if TJ Watt's on, a 3 seed, even if he's only got 13 sacks and they have a top 3 defense, that may well be enough to win. But if he does have a low sack total, it does open the door for someone to come from the clouds and take it from him. But we'll talk about that at a later time. For now, we're done. So don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you tomorrow.